Hi, Billy Cunningham, the Great American. Let's continue. Barry Lynn has been executive director of the Americans United for Separation of Church and State for the last 17 years or so. He's an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ and a prominent leader of the religious left in the United States. He's known to be a strong advocate of the separation of church and state. And Barry Lynn, welcome again to the Bill Cunningham Show.
Bill, it's nice to be back with you.
Where does life find you today?
I am in Louisiana, actually, in New Orleans, as they say, and we're doing a little panel down here and then going over to Lafayette. Because the South, as you know, Bill, these days are doing a lot of legislating, and a lot of it is related to church-state separation, and it's generally not good.
What are your thoughts about Mississippi and, I guess, North Carolina, that in Mississippi they passed legislation they call the Religious Freedom Act, in which businesses do not have to provide services to gay couples, and North Carolina deals with bathroom facilities for those who may be confused about being a man or a woman. How do you react to the religious freedom argument of Mississippi?
Yeah, well, it's a terrible idea. It's arguably the worst of all of these so-called religious freedom bills. It was signed by Governor Bryan just days ago. It permits any employer, whether that's a government entity, a private operator, a healthcare facility, to use religion to justify discrimination against anyone, not just the gay community, but single mothers, divorcees, whatever it is that your religion, you say, precludes you from offering a service or a product. This would, in theory, permit you to do so. Now, it just happens that 2 days ago down in Mississippi, a couple was asked to move out of their recreational vehicle park, their RV park, because they are an interracial couple. The guy who owns the park says, well, my church is against interracial marriage, so you have to leave. So the good news is we kind of know that race discrimination is different from other forms of discriminatory treatment, so the RV owner may not be able to get away with that. But it remains to be seen what will happen in Mississippi. Can you imagine going in? Let's say you are a single mother and you want to go in for counseling in regard to your son or daughter's psychological problem, and the counselor says, well, you know, as a religious matter, I don't think you should have been a single mother, and you should have just stayed with the father, and therefore I'm not going to engage in counseling with you, putting, of course, the safety, the health of that son of hers or daughter of hers at risk. This is an absurd flipping of the very idea of religious freedom.
Look at it this way. I think it was the couple in the state of Washington. They had a wedding cake business in which I've been in private businesses, small businesses before, and what you want to do is not to make any discrimination against anybody because you only care about the green. You don't care about race. You don't care about gender. You don't care about sexual orientation. If you're a small business owner, you just want people to walk in your door and do business with you. On the other hand, I can understand that if you're like a wedding photographer, maybe not the wedding cake because the cake can be picked up and taken to the gay wedding. But if you're a wedding photographer and you're a born-again Christian and you're an evangelical and you don't want to attend a gay wedding, I can understand the American people saying, you know what, that's different than race discrimination, and it's different than somebody walking into your shop to buy a wedding cake that you bake there, give them the cake to go to the wedding. Are you sympathetic at all to someone like a photographer who's a born-again Christian not wanting to attend a gay marriage?
No, I'm not very sympathetic to that because I don't think attending a wedding is the same as participating in a wedding. For example, I happened to do my own daughter's a wedding ceremony about 18 months ago. It was really beautiful. The participants in that are the people who she chose to be her bridesmaids and the flower girl and me and but the participant is not the person who takes the pictures. A participant is not the person who sets up the chairs, not the one who delivers the food. These are not participants in any meaningful sense. And if you hold yourself out as a small business person at any level of business, you hold yourself out as doing work for the public, offering your services, your products to the public, frankly, then you've got to offer it to everybody. And religion, frankly, does not become an excuse for denying the giving of that service or that product to anybody.
And Barry Lynn, in North Carolina, there's something about bathroom facilities that you have to go to the bathroom so to speak, that actually coincides with your gender at birth. Unlike gay issues, which maybe 1, 2, 3% of us are gay, on the other hand, I would think 0.1 or less percent have transgender issues. So North Carolina, PayPal and others gone after North Carolina now because they have a bathroom facilities bill that says that you have to go to the bathroom that indicates your gender at birth. Do you have a problem with that?
Well, yeah, I do have a problem with that because what this was all about in North Carolina was a decision by the Charlotte, North Carolina City Council to just develop a policy of non-discrimination against transgender people. It wasn't about bathrooms, although it arguably had some effect on that, because transgender people sometimes find themselves in very awkward, very hostile, volatile situations when they attempt to use a bathroom with which they feel comfortable using. So what does the state do? It says, well, Charlotte has gone too far, so we are going to pass a bill and specifically mention bathrooms. The one in Charlotte did not. And we're going to say you must go to the bathroom in which you are of the same gender of the one that appears on your birth certificate. Now, there are, I think, 125 cities that have these ordinances that permit you to choose where you feel more comfortable. There have been no sexual assaults. Nobody does what the folks in North Carolina claim to be happening overnight, men dressing up like a woman so they can assault your grandmother, right?
Right.
This never happens. But transgender people are the subject of violence in and out of bathroom facilities, and that's a real issue. So I'm very sympathetic to passing these transgender bills that give full rights and civil rights to transgender people.
Look at it this way. I had a 2-hour flight. I go back and forth to New York City a lot from Cincinnati, and it's about a 2-hour flight. Many times you get off the plane in LaGuardia, which is like a Greyhound bus station as far as what it looks like, and you go into the men's room, and about 3 weeks ago I walk in to the men's room, and in front of me as I'm walking in appears to be a woman. Dressed, it's in a dress. The weather was nice this particular day, and looked like a woman. And I was kind of taken aback by the fact that a woman was going to the men's bathroom, so I'm thinking, well, maybe the ladies' bathroom is full. She's going to go into a stall. She didn't go into a stall. She stood next to me at the male urinal, upright, and urinated. And I'm looking over there, and I felt a bit unusual, shall we say, to have a relatively attractive 25-year-old blonde woman standing up, urinating next to me. Now, and I didn't know what to say or do. I just did my business, washed my hands, and left. But if there was a 8, 9, 10-year-old boy with the same circumstances, are you sensitive to what the father or mother or the boy himself may feel in that circumstance?
Yeah, I am, but I think anything's a teachable moment. I mean, frankly, I remember the first time my 2 kids are grown now, but the first time that I was walking down the street with my daughter, and there were 2 men in Washington, D.C., where I live, holding hands. And she said, why are they holding hands? And without, getting terribly technical about it, I just said, well, they're probably in love like your mom and I, but they're 2 men, and they're in love with each other. That's the way the world works. You don't have to explain in great detail. Bill, I'm really glad to hear that you were not paralyzed.
I didn't have a bashful bladder.
Incident. But you've used this word twice, though. Now, see that's not only is that politically correct. I really think it's fundamentally
it's the circumstance, not the person. It's the circumstance. We were like almost shoulder to shoulder, and it was a woman. But on another issue,
sure.
Ted Cruz has made as part of his campaign the idea that he's an evangelical, born again. His father is a very conservative minister, and every time he goes into a state, the first thing he does is organize the Protestant Christian churches on his side in order to promote his candidacy. Now that's fine. I mean, I'm a practicing Roman Catholic. That's a different branch of my tree, but it's okay with me. And do you think he should spend less time on religious issues, forming his intellect and his capacity to be the president, and more time on other issues? Do you have a problem with Ted Cruz and his religiosity that he goes through in most of these races?
Well, I do have some problems with that because religiosity is or may or may not comport with what your actual spiritual feelings are. You know, we have this unusual election cycle. I mean, this is the most religion-saturated presidential campaign in my lifetime. And you've got, Ted Cruz. You have Ted Cruz's father, of course, said that he would be the next president. He's the anointed one and all of that. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have one thing in agreement. The Bible is their favorite book. Although if you say that, which you're entitled to say in America, but if you say it, then you probably ought to know more about it than and be willing to answer other questions. When Donald Trump said it was his favorite book, someone asked him what his favorite passage was. He said he couldn't really answer that because it was too personal. See, this is the thing that bothers people. When he spoke at Liberty University, Donald Trump said, I was talking to Jerry Jr., that's Jerry Falwell's son, who runs Liberty University now, and he said, we were talking about a specific passage, and then he went to little note cards that he had in front of him, and he said, this passage in 2 Corinthians, and I was sitting there with my wife, it was some holiday, and I said, that's going to get him in a lot of trouble. She said, oh, nobody will notice that. But, of course, they did because 2 Corinthians, we added to the phrase, and 1 Ephesians, and you could make a joke, walk into a bar. But that's not what this is about. He obviously didn't even understand that Bible-believing Christians call it 2 Corinthians, not 2 Corinthians. So this bothers me. Howard Dean did the same thing. They asked him when he was running for president. He's a Democrat. I want to be clear that, I'm a nonpartisan complainer about these things. Howard Dean was asked what's his favorite book in the New Testament, and he said Job, and the interviewer said, well, that's actually in the Old Testament, and he said, well, any one of those Gospels. So again, if you want to play like you're a theologian, you better know what you're talking about.
Well, at this point, we're not, I don't know how things are going to turn out, but whatever happens, it's very likely whoever the presidential nominee after Wisconsin, now who knows if Trump's going to get it now. I think Cruz may have the inside track. But nonetheless, whoever is going to be nominated and elected is likely going to take the oath of office on top of the Bible. Barack Hussein Obama took the oath of office on top of Abraham Lincoln's Bible. Do you have a problem with that, Barry Lynn?
No, it's just that you don't have to do that. And in fact, for a period in our American history, presidents stopped using it. They used it at the beginning, then they stopped, then they went back to it, I think, during the Roosevelt administration. You can do it as long as you're entitled to take an oath on anything. There was a huge controversy, as you probably remember, when Keith Ellison, who was the first Muslim, decided to. He didn't really take the oath on the Bible, but or on the Quran, but he did have some pictures taken with him in the Quran, and that upset the religious right. Was all freaked out about that, just as they're freaked out the first time a Hindu leader gave the prayer that opens the congressional sessions. They're all in favor of prayer unless it's somebody else's religion where the prayer is occurring, and then they got all upset about and protest. And in the case of the Hindu religious leader, the people who protested loudly and started yelling from atop the House of Representatives were briefly arrested. That doesn't mean there's a war in Christianity. It means that you have to provide some decorum. You have to do things in the right way. You don't get to articulate your viewpoint from the top of the viewing area of the House of Representatives, even if you feel strongly about it.
Do you think the solution in North Carolina is a solution in search of a problem? Because in Mississippi, I don't know if large numbers of shop owners have shown up in Oxford, Mississippi, in the capital to say, you know what, we're having problems with gays in our community, in which they want to give us all this money. We don't want to provide services. I would think these are political acts more than real acts, because I can't imagine it being a big deal. Gay Americans, lesbians, the LGBT community has been around for hundreds of thousands of years. They're going to be around for hundreds of thousands of years in the future. The first thing I want to do as a Christian, as a practicing Roman Catholic, is accept people the way they are and not be judgmental. If I ran a business, I would have no problem whatsoever servicing in my business gay or lesbian or transsexual or transformers, whatever the hell it is. I'd say it's all okay with me. Do you think that the politicians are doing this because it's politics, or are they trying to save small business?
No, they're doing it because it's politics. There's no need to have any of these pieces of legislation. Religious liberty is fully protected in this country. In Georgia, by the way, where they tried the same kind of approach, Governor Deal vetoed the bill, although he said he would have signed a bill that simply said if you're a minister or a minister of music at a church, you don't have to participate in a religious service.
Right.
That makes perfectly good sense.
Yes.
That's what the Constitution already guarantees. I'm a minister, as you said. When somebody says, will you perform my wedding, I say, well, we have some counseling sessions, or I want to know you better. I don't just randomly go out and perform weddings. So I think we know, the ministers in this country, priests, rabbis know, you don't have to perform weddings. That's a little different than setting up the chairs for the service.
All right, Barry Lynn, what is your website, if any? If more people around the nation want to get your thoughts on the separation of church and state, what is your website, if any?
All right, it is. It's www.au.org. That's au.org. My new book is God and Government. You can buy that on Amazon, and it'll give you a little view of my 25 years doing this work.
Barry Lynn, thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thanks, Bill.